The story begins in 2025 when the apocalypse draws near. An unexpected meteor shower brought with it an unknown virus that devastated Earth, turning more than 80% of the population into human-devouring monsters. Among the survivors, only a small portion awakened supernatural abilities and came to rule over this chaotic new world. The streets were swarming with monsters, filled with screams and noise. In the middle of this chaos, bandits captured a boy, accusing him of running away after receiving help and even daring to steal. The women beside him mocked him, saying he was like a cursed rat that deserved to die. The protagonist, lying on the ground spitting plasma, declared that he would rather lose his life than remain under the same roof as a demon like that. Bitter, he regretted ever trusting that woman, for without her his plan would not have been exposed so soon. The woman approached and struck him across the face, declaring that she now belonged to Kwang and that he had no right to call her by name. He retorted that if he had known her true nature, he never would have sought her out at the start of the apocalypse. With disdain, she replied that he could say whatever he wanted, but he was nothing more than a fool and asked Kwang what should be done with that trash. Tu stepped in saying trash should be discarded and reminding him that in this world, only those with supernatural powers were the true rulers. Kwang then kicked him hard, sending him plummeting from a high place to the ground below. The woman asked why he hadn't simply used his ability to drain him completely, but Tu replied that he wouldn't waste his power on something so insignificant, and that at least he would serve as food for the zombies below. On the ground, the protagonist began to be devoured by the creatures, thinking that the humans who wielded powers would eventually wipe them all out. In the next instant, the scene shifted. He was in a building being beaten by a classmate who threatened him to stay away from Anna or else next time he'd break his legs. Dazed and with a bruised face, he wondered if he hadn't been devoured by those mutant zombies. Strangely, he noticed his body bore no wounds, nor did he feel hunger. Impossible, since he had spent months starving and on the verge of collapse. Confused, he questioned what was happening. The bully pressed on, asking if he still had the guts to ignore him, saying he'd teach him a lesson, because he had no idea who ruled the south zone of the university. Distracted, the protagonist wondered if they were a part of Chang Sudong's team. The bully grabbed him by the shirt, boasting that he was the top dog of the south zone. Suddenly, the protagonist reacted with a knee strike to the aggressor's stomach, sending him collapsing and coughing plasma. Enraged, the brute ordered his cronies to attack. They were furious at seeing their leader hurt and swore revenge. The protagonist, however, stared at them coldly, realizing how flawed they were. For him, who had faced a real apocalypse, dealing with enemies like this was simple. In moments, he brought most of them down, leaving only two. One hesitated, questioning whether they should retreat, but the other convinced him that it would be shameful to run now. They decided to attack together, one from each side. Even so, the protagonist defeated them easily, seizing the dagger and club from their hands. He pointed at the last one, threatening to finish him off if he didn't back down. Terrified, the boy surrendered, but was soon taken down as well. The protagonist breathed heavily, disoriented, wondering if this was just a dream or his final flicker of consciousness before death. Though still weak, he noticed he was in better physical shape than before. Looking at his phone, he saw the date. He had returned 1 week before the apocalypse began. Shocked, he ran to the window and confirmed that everything was still normal outside. He had truly gone back in time. Convinced he needed to act immediately, he thought about gathering supplies as soon as possible, since once the apocalypse began, it would be far harder to survive. This would be his way of making up for the mistakes of his past life. Suddenly, a notification appeared before his eyes. The system had detected him and was activating evolution mode, binding itself to him. New messages arrived, informing him that the system could absorb external energy and help the user evolve, allowing him to surpass human limits. The protagonist questioned the system, asking if this meant he could evolve until he reached immortality. The system confirmed that this was a good way to understand it, explaining that it could convert collected energy into abilities, but warning that conversion required large amounts of energy. The protagonist then concluded that he could absorb any type of energy and decided to test if the system was real. He went to the breaker and released electrical discharges, shutting off all the lights in the place. People began to wonder what had happened, if the bulbs had burned out or if there had been a power outage. Students leave their classrooms with their bags, commenting that without power, there won't be classes either. The protagonist runs through the hallways, generating a strange pressure in the air. Frightened, the students look around without understanding what just happened. He stops his sprint and confirms to himself that he truly can absorb and use energy. Soon after, the system sends new notifications. Without accumulated energy, abilities cannot be used. He questions if that's serious and checks his current level, puzzled that after absorbing all the electricity from the university, his progress is still so low. The system explains that electrical energy is only a common, low-level source. To evolve quickly, he needs to absorb energy derived from abilities. The protagonist realizes those abilities will only appear when the apocalypse begins in a week and understands that reaching level 2 will not be easy. New notifications appear. The countdown to the apocalypse shows 168 hours. The system activates task rewards and instructs him to gather food, water, and weapons within 3 days as an initial survival fund. It also unlocks the map and the storage feature. The protagonist asks about this storage, and the system explains that any object he touches can be stored except for living beings, which require consent. Impressed, he admits the system is complete, providing guidance, storage, and supply points already marked on the map. Determined, he vows that this time he won't let the past repeat. He will make everyone pay for what happened. Later, elsewhere, he walks to a market, calculating that a little over 100 hours remain before the apocalypse begins. The system's mission demands he gather enough supplies in 3 days. Whistling, he begins filling the storage, but grows irritated when the mission shows only 0.6%. He considers that progress far too slow, but also remembers he's not just there for provisions. If he can find the items hidden by Chang Sudong, he can accelerate progress. Suddenly, guards notice him and confront him, saying he can't enter. The protagonist stays calm but releases energy through his hand. Before they can argue, both guards are struck by lightning, while the system warns that reserves are below 5%. He continues walking to the door, opens it, and heads downstairs. At that moment, a voice calls him Luo Hao and asks what he's doing there, saying that place is suspicious. The protagonist curses his luck, wondering why she had to be there of all times, making it harder for him to slip in quietly. The girl begs him to leave quickly, saying a classmate tricked her into playing cards and she lost over 200,000 yuan in just 3 rounds. Since she didn't pay, they wouldn't let her go. He thinks he doesn't want to get involved in her mess. A guy nearby mocks him, asking if he plans to play the hero and pay her debt. Luo Hao stares back in silence, but the girl pleads again, asking if he could at least lend her 20,000 yuan since they promised to let her go for that amount. The protagonist coldly replies that he understands but prefers not to interfere, wishing the guy's fun as he turns to leave. The man bursts out laughing, mocking her, saying he was sure that pushover would pay, but he didn't even dare talk to them and probably has no money at all to be squeezed. Frustrated, the girl laments that he wasn't like this before and wonders if she lost the charm she once had over him. A thug beside her comments that he was just messing around, but finds it odd that a student suddenly showed up there and even had people following him. He recalls the look that boy gave earlier, similar to someone he had once taken down, and wonders if he's just being paranoid. Elsewhere, the protagonist realizes he has become a target and thinks nothing good ever happens when Anna is involved. Zhao Yujin, known as the Viper and one of Chang's 4 kings, is introduced as someone sharp-minded who doesn't match his appearance. Sudong keeps him as a strategist since he's a cautious and calculating man, even capable of ordering someone to shadow others closely. The guards begin opening doors, searching for signs, asking why the boss is being paranoid over a mere student. They stress that Zhao has always been cautious, and without that, he never would have come so far. Meanwhile, Luo feels he has energy left for only one more attack. Hao seizes the chance, leaps forward, and fires a lightning strike, determined to end it all in one blow. Soon the guards are down, and the protagonist concludes that's enough, finally able to enter the warehouse in peace. At that instant, someone approaches armed, saying Zhao was right and his luck has run out. Sounds echo through the place, noises like gunfire, and people start wondering what's happening. A voice announces that due to an unexpected incident, the casino will temporarily close and everyone must leave through the front entrance. Customers protest, saying they haven't finished their bets. A subordinate informs Zhao that the place is clear. He comments that the boy did look suspicious, and it's a good thing he had prepared a plan B. He trusts Pojun's methods, but hopes the boy doesn't die since he still needs to uncover his identity. In another room, Luo dodges a shot. Pojun appears, ordering him to turn around and put his hands on his head, no tricks, or the next bullet will go through his skull. Hao recognizes the face and the voice. It's Pojun. He remembers the day when, starving and weak, he received a bag of food from him, along with just a few words of introduction. Back then, Pojun invited him to gather supplies together, a gesture Hao never forgot. Now, surprised by the reunion, he hears Pojun demand that he turn around. The protagonist tries to play it off, saying it's all a misunderstanding, that he only slipped in the bathroom. Pojun coldly replies that his job is to put a hole in his head, and if he has complaints, he can take them to the boss. Luo raises his hands, spotting a light switch nearby. He smiles, thinking himself unlucky, but suddenly the power cuts off. The guards are puzzled and ask if they should check on Pojun. Zhao orders them to just send someone to fix the switch, reinforcing that everyone else should guard the main entrance and watch for ambushes, since the boy could just be bait. Meanwhile, Pojun opens fire, saying Luo is begging to die. The protagonist dodges the bullets, and Pojun notices something strange in his movements, even questioning if he's human. Luo sneaks up from behind, but Pojun reacts quickly, pulling a dagger and almost striking him. Hao narrowly evades and taunts that he knew he was hiding a blade. Pojun wonders if they had met before. The protagonist reasons that, with the sound of gunfire, Zhao must have ordered the casino evacuated. And now isn't the time for memories. Pojun once again senses that strange electric current in Luo's body. In a swift move, Hao appears behind him, catching him off guard. Pojun tries to stab him with the dagger, but Hao grabs his hand, apologizes, and unleashes a surge of electricity. Pojun's body is overtaken by the energy, which spreads through the surroundings. Luo notices the destruction and realizes the electricity hit a nearby oil pipeline. He understands he absorbed all the casino's energy, and even trying to conserve it, he nearly used everything just to create an electric field. Hao looks at the debris scattered across the floor and thinks he's earned an unexpected bonus, since now there's more than one path to the storage vault. Pojun comes to, dazed, and asks if that explosion was his doing too, questioning why he didn't finish him off when it would have been so easy. He demands to know who he is, says he can't lie to himself, and even gives him advice. The kid's tricks can never compare to his methods, because the real boss here is Chang Shu. The protagonist attacks him again with electric shocks, remarking that it's to be expected from the former captain of the Wolf Squad to stay conscious even after such a charge. But soon, he'll just be a broken man. Moments later, subordinates arrive with bad news. The oil pipeline in the back corridor exploded. Zhao asks if Pojun wasn't there and hears that they found him unconscious. Yujin lowers his head, and Anna steps forward complaining that the blast was so loud it scared her and even made her back lock up. She gets slapped in the face, and the redhead, stunned, asks why he hit her. Zhao snaps back that the boy just defeated Chang's best fighter and questions if they still call him a pushover and think he's an idiot, ordering them to tie her up. Anna tries to explain, saying it's a misunderstanding and that she knows nothing, not even the boy's next move. Zhao orders them to follow him, and when a subordinate asks why they're leaving if the explosion happened in the bathroom, he replies that the boy's real target is the storage vault. Elsewhere, Luo breaks open a door and goes down the stairs, realizing he's reached the underground depot. Hao looks around in awe at the structure, practically a fortress beneath the earth. Emergency stockpiles, water, clothes, solar panels, an arsenal of weapons. He wonders what Chang intends with all this and decides that today is his lucky day. He'll take everything and leave nothing behind. Spotting an energy stone, he remembers these crystals only appeared after the apocalypse began and finds it strange to see one here. He wonders if Chang built this bunker specifically foreseeing the end of the world, and whether this is a coincidence or a secret he didn't know before being reborn. He doesn't care as long as he can absorb the stone before anyone else. However, the system notifies him that since he already possesses a system, energy stone absorption is blocked. Hao sighs, saying it was too easy to be true, and concludes that this damn system also has its own restrictions. He decides to store the crystals for later research. Other notifications appear informing him that the current mission has been successfully completed. Preparation for survival on Doomsday. He believes those energy stones gave him a huge boost. The system announces it is processing the reward and congratulates him for obtaining the power of energy conversion. Hao wonders if this gift is different from simple energy absorption and understands the explanation. He can transform any type of energy from objects into his own power without needing to consume stones. Even with the mission completed, he considers looting the other rooms, but someone shows up. Zhao appears behind him, saying he found a rat cornered in the depot and that it's time to finish him. Hao bolts instantly. A subordinate assures him they've already checked everything and there's no one else there. Zhao frowns, noticing the supplies are gone. He finds it strange since all exits were sealed and the walls intact. He realizes what's happening and orders everyone on high alert, ensuring the intruder doesn't escape alive. He wonders how the boy managed to move everything so quickly and considers the possibility that he is one of them. Hidden, Hao thinks he let his guard down. Scouring such a vast bunker cost him too much time, and he didn't expect the boss to arrive so soon. The situation is dire. The enemies are armed to the teeth. Luckily, the room has blind spots, leaving him no choice but to wait and strike if they approach, though he has little energy left. Soon the guards shout they found him, and Hao realizes it was obvious they'd search every corner. He questions why the hell there was a door there. Concluding he has no choice, he prepares to charge them head-on, deciding now is the time to test his new power. The guards are shocked by his speed. Luo slits open his own hand and activates energy conversion, flipping through the air and appearing right before them. Gunshots echo and the soldiers ask if they hit him. Hao only smiles before lunging forward, striking them hard while thinking with satisfaction that the technique worked. The bullet's kinetic energy really can be converted into another force. The only annoyance is wondering how to store this power without always seeming like he needs an extra mouth in his hand. As the smoke clears, more guards appear, ready to fire, saying he finally came out of hiding just to die. A blonde orders them to stay sharp since he defeated Commander Pojun. His partner scoffs, saying there's no reason to fear. No matter how strong he is, there's no way he can win here. The protagonist raises his hand, revealing a mouth in the center of his palm that opens into a smile, releasing a dark aura. Terrified, the enemies fire and scream that he's a monster. Luo uses his conversion technique again, thinking that in the end it's just two strange mouths on his hands, not understanding why they're so horrified. He rushes forward and lands a kick straight into one man's face. Two others look alarmed, but before they can react, Hao is already upon them, reflecting that they haven't yet faced mutant zombies, and maybe that explains their reaction. The gunfire continues, targeting his hand with shouts to drive back that monster, but soon their ammunition runs dry. Luo laughs, commenting that the gun is empty. What a shame, since he hoped to convert even more energy. He continues his assault, deciding it's enough. The bullets transformed into energy are released, and the mouths on his hands close, relieving him, since he didn't want to wander the world with them always exposed. He wonders if this power could go beyond kinetic conversion and simple strength enhancement. At that moment, a sudden volley hits him by surprise. Armed guards unleash a heavy rifle barrage against him, certain it would be enough to take him down. They hold firm, but soon hear a strange sound. Luo emerges with a serious expression, advancing even while wounded and remarking that it hurt. They question if he still has the strength to fight, urging their comrades to stay calm and reminding them he's alone. Hao thinks to himself that it was a good thing he tested using the stored energy to reinforce his body. Otherwise, the sneak attack would have been fatal. But he doesn't know how many enemies remain and concludes he must escape quickly. The system notifies that the transfer is complete, and the protagonist decides to unleash all his energy at once. At that moment, Zhao appears from behind, declaring that he too is one of his kind, observing that bullets and matter around vanish instantly and asking whether this is some kind of teleportation or another hidden power. Hao counterattacks, but Yujin summons a gigantic metallic arm, laughing off the kick he received and saying it didn't even tickle, ordering him straight to hell. Plasma spreads as Zhao reveals an even more intimidating form, promising to crush him. The protagonist backs away screaming in shock, wondering how that man already has powers before the apocalypse even began, and if it has something to do with the energy stone found in the bunker. Zhao mocks him, saying there's no time for daydreaming and ordering him to stop running. Luo tries to absorb the impact with conversion, but realizes his power can't even neutralize the shockwave of Zhao's blows. He thinks that in his past life, he never saw the Viper wield abilities so completely, and wonders if he had always been hiding his fangs. Zhao declares that it doesn't matter who sent him. Once he invaded this place, his fate was sealed. However, since his uncle values rare talents, he's willing to offer him a chance. If he returns everything he stole, kneels, and swears loyalty, he can leave alive. Hao smiles and replies that he's hilarious, but his policy is simple: never return what he takes. Even if Zhao knelt and begged, he wouldn't give anything back. Yujin then sentences that he'll eliminate him and offer his corpse as a gift to Lord Chang, curious to see if his body is as stubborn as his sharp tongue. The protagonist evaluates that Zhao's metallic power is both offensive and defensive, and that using energy as before wouldn't be enough to scratch his skin. The system notifies him the charge is ready. Luo decides his only option is to concentrate all his energy into a single point of his body. He blocks the strike with effort and counterattacks, smashing the enemy's metallic hand to pieces. Zhao's eyes widen in shock as the protagonist grabs him by the clothes. Yujin glares at Luo and demands to know what the hell that power is, saying his strength only keeps growing and demanding to know how he dares deceive him. Luo snaps back that he doesn't want to hear that from someone who spent his entire life deceiving others, and demands to know how Zhao obtained his abilities. Zhao looks confused, then begins to laugh, asking if he's really so powerful yet doesn't know the origin of his own gifts. Hao presses, saying that if he won't reveal it, he can carry that damned secret straight to hell. Yujin warns him to think carefully before trying because up to now all he's done is steal supplies. With the power he has, they could still negotiate. Besides, he is one of Lord Chang's men, and if Hao dares kill him, his life will become a true hell. The protagonist drops him to the ground and Zhao smiles, saying it's good to see he knows his place. But his eyes go wide again when Luo glares at him and tells him to wait just a little at the bridge of no return because they'll meet there soon enough. Before Zhao can react, someone steps in. It's Pojun. Hao is surprised and asks if he's gone mad, saying that fight is not something ordinary people should get involved in. Pojun, panting, apologizes and says he can't let him kill Zhao. Hao frowns and asks what they used to threaten him. Pojun, dagger in hand, orders silence. Zhao praises him, saying he arrived just in time and that when they return, he'll make sure Lord Chang hears of his heroic act, promising a grand reward, maybe even the release of his wife and daughter. Luo, outraged, repeats the words wife and daughter and questions whether Zhao has always been this despicable. Zhao sneers, thanking him for the compliment but regretting that Pojun and the rat had to see this side of him. He declares he can't let either of them leave alive and hopes they'll enjoy themselves in hell. To reassure them, he adds he won't forget to mention the heroic act to Lord Chang. Hao scoffs, saying Zhao talks all he wants, locks everyone in and flees, only to notice a strange clicking sound. Grenade after grenade is hurled into the place, filling it with smoke. Luo smashes at the wall with all his strength to escape, thinking there really was another level beneath the casino. Thankfully, he remembered in time, since he estimates at least 20 thugs are upstairs. He considers Zhao a truly inhuman monster. Pojun, surprised, remarks he never thought there would be such a place under a casino, and asks how Hao knew. The two lock eyes, and Pojun proposes they stop, since Zhao isn't there, and there's no reason to fight. Hao steps away, saying that if he hadn't interfered, he would have already finished that bastard off, and instead he made them risk being blown up together. Pojun insists he can't die yet, not before finding out where Zhao imprisoned his wife and daughter. And as for Hao, he warns that if he doesn't treat his wounds soon, he'll lose sight in his left eye. He remembers how Pojun once spared him and even saved him now, taking the impact of the explosion in his place. He says there's no way to repay such kindness, but if he can save his family, he will gladly give his life in return. Luo reflects that he used to talk like that even before the apocalypse, almost like a character from a war novel who rises as a king. He answers that he doesn't care about his life, but agrees it's better to treat the wounds quickly. Pojun asks if it will be right there, saying they should go to a hospital, but there's no doctor nearby. Hao summons medical kits before him. Surprised, Pojun asks if that's an ability, and concludes maybe that's why Zhao was obsessed with him. Hao retorts, asking if he really didn't know. Pojun sighs and replies that they would never share such information with a mere pawn, that he only serves because his family is being held hostage. Luo thinks that in life and death situations, talking this way becomes natural, and reminds himself that this is still before the apocalypse. He hands him the kit and tells him to treat his injuries. Pojun questions why he should, since he had seriously tried to kill him earlier. Hao replies by asking what the problem is, saying that if he wants to find his family, he can't die there. Besides, he knows what's going on in this place, and maybe his family is nearby. They will search together. Pojun lowers his head, apologizes, and admits he fired, thinking Luo was from another gang. He didn't expect him to be unaffiliated, and surprisingly, he acknowledges that he is a fair man. Hao comments that when Pojun finds his family, he himself will take advantage of the distraction to loot all 3 underground levels of the place. Pojun protests, saying he just opened his heart and is already being betrayed, asking if he really plans to rob him. They continue walking, and the veteran remarks that the first basement of the supermarket had a casino. Beneath it, a storage vault. And now they discovered yet another hidden tunnel. He questions what the hell Zudong is planning. Luo examines the walls and comments that the tunnel looks like it was built from an old sewer. Pojun asks about the sewer's length, but Hao tells him not to worry, they're almost there. Soon they stop before heavy bars. The veteran wonders what place this is, while the protagonist immediately recognizes it, exactly as he remembered from his past life. After the apocalypse, Chang used this space as a prison for those who dared disobey him, and he himself had once been locked there. From the reinforced iron door, he concludes that the underground prison was already in use before the apocalypse. Between energy stones, bunkers, supplies, and deep excavations, Luo curses Chang and decides to clean this place out first. He kicks the door open, revealing people locked up, wounded, and filthy in deplorable conditions. Pojun approaches, horrified, asking if this is truly an underground prison, and concludes that this is where Chang hid his victims. He goes to the cells and asks if they are all right and what happened. A desperate woman begs to be killed before she is turned into a monster. Pojun asks what this story about monsters means and takes the chance to ask if anyone has seen a young woman with a child. Hao cuts him off, saying to leave the questions for later. Strange noises echo, and a tense Pojun asks what that is. Suddenly the doors burst open and a horde of creatures appears. Hao realizes they have a problem. Mana explodes around him, and Luo thinks that the apocalypse hasn't even started, yet mutant zombies are already here. He feels concerned since he used up all his energy blocking the explosion earlier. On top of that, there are women locked in the cells, and he can't just run away. He considers luring them away first, and only then finding a solution. Pojun pulls out his weapon and fires desperately, not understanding what he's facing. The bullets hit but don't stop the creatures. The ammo runs out quickly and Hao drags him back, keeping him from being surrounded. The veteran, terrified, asks if he knows what those monsters are. The protagonist calmly answers, they are low-level mutant zombies. Bullets won't work and shooting will only attract more. He orders him to stay put and not fire again. If things get worse, he should free the women and escape, because he himself will face them. Luo charges forward, thinking maybe this is better. If Pojun and the prisoners leave, he can fight freely without worrying about others. He shouts defiantly, declaring that he found what he was looking for, a crystalline core. He grips it tightly, confirming that these mutant zombies possess the same kind of core as the monsters he knew in the apocalypse of his past life. Surrounded, he hears Pojun shout that he is sacrificing himself for a stranger and defenseless women. With a trembling voice, the veteran promises he will never forget this heroic act, recalling similar feats he once witnessed on the battlefield. Hao unleashes intense lightning that annihilates the enemies, marveling at the energy, comparing the taste of that core to an electric eel. Po Jun, bewildered, asks what he just did, while Luo continues striking with overwhelming force. He kicks the monsters, explodes their heads, stomps on their eyes until they're reduced to pieces, though he thinks it's a shame those cores are incomplete and of low quality. Still, at least he won't have to worry about energy for a while. He scolds Po Jun, asking why he's still there when he told him to flee first. The veteran replies that he doesn't even know what to think anymore, and insists on asking what those creatures are. Luo answers firmly. They are humans infected by an unknown virus. After infection, their brains die and they become beasts driven only by hunger and violence. Po Jun's eyes widen. He repeats unknown virus and asks if both his and Zhao's powers were also caused by the same thing. Hao thinks he isn't wrong, but remembers that in the post-apocalyptic world, speaking too much about mutants is practically asking to be killed. What really matters is understanding why mutant zombies are already here and what those energy stones from earlier mean. Could Chang be conducting secret experiments? Po Jun interrupts, shocked, asking if he's saying the women locked in the cells turned into those monsters earlier. He shakes his head, saying it can't be. Luo replies that this place is clearly a laboratory, and if he doesn't believe it, he can step inside and see with his own eyes. He adds that if Chang truly threatened his wife and daughter, he wouldn't use them as test subjects like that. Po Jun eventually nods, admitting it makes sense. In another room with a large pit at its center, Hao concludes the mutant zombies were artificially created, which explains why their crystal cores are incomplete. Chang is full of secrets. He wonders where he got so much mutation fluid. Po Jun looks closer and notices people trapped inside tanks filled with green liquid and decides to approach, but Hao stops him, warning that touching the fluid will infect him. Suddenly, something happens. A figure inside one of the tanks awakens and begins slamming against the glass until it shatters, releasing a brilliant light. Luo recognizes her immediately and is stunned. It's Shen Qin Gyu, the legendary Ice Queen. The scene cuts elsewhere. A defensive line struggles to hold back a horde of monsters. A young man wielding an axe orders no one to retreat, for retreat means death, and demands to know about reinforcements. His comrade replies that the camps ask them to wait a bit longer. The leader of the Scavenger Condor's mercenary squad, an A-rank enhancement expert named Xiao Zhantian, erupts in fury, saying if they wait any longer, they'll all be devoured, cursing the cowards who abandoned them. He realizes the horde has entered berserk mode. Suddenly, a light cuts across the sky and Zhan cheers. Reinforcements have arrived. An explosion devastates the zombies, and everyone stands in shock as Shen, the Ice Queen, appears. One ignorant soldier asks if they only sent a woman, but the chief scolds him and says he hasn't realized who she is. In disbelief, he mutters he never thought the elders would let her out, but there's no doubt she's a living legend. In a single strike, she wipes out dozens of mutants, displaying the power of an S-rank. The mercenaries shout with joy, claiming they're saved. Qin, however, remains serious, thinking they can still finish off the survivors easily, but wonders why the horde appeared so close to camp. Soon she feels a suffocating presence. A giant zombie emerges, crushing a man with ease. The pressure is overwhelming, and she realizes it's a berserk beast. She orders immediate retreat, saying she'll cover them. The chief yells for the soldiers to run if they want to live. Qin assesses that it might be a mutant zombie lord, perhaps even the leader of the horde, and fears she's stumbled into a trap. With no choice, she decides to fight. Returning to the present, Shen slowly awakens. Noticing her wounds have been treated, her last memory was the battle against the mutant lord, and she wonders how she's still alive, where she is, and who undressed her. Hao approaches and says she finally woke up. He explains he found her unconscious in an alley while searching for supplies, and asks why she was so badly injured. He offers her a can of food, saying he knows how hard it is to find something like that, but she needs to eat and recover her strength. In the room, Po Jun slips and falls into strange liquid. Hao calls out to him, but in his mind he remembers the past. Shen had eaten, rested, and spent a night in his home, but disappeared the next day. Now he can't understand how she ended up inside one of Chang Sudong's tanks. Shen clutches her head, groaning in pain. Smoke escapes her mouth and she screams, vowing to wipe out everything. Suddenly she begins destroying the surroundings. Hao panics, thinking they're dozens of meters underground. If the place collapses, no one will survive. He rushes to her, begging her to calm down. He asks if she intends to kill everyone there. Shen's eyes widen as she feels his touch. Luo insists that it's all a misunderstanding and pleads for her to wait. Without hesitation, Shen charges and unleashes an ice strike. Hao reacts at the last moment, grabbing the frozen blade with his hands and activating his energy conversion, muttering that it was close. He was nearly pierced through. He scolds her, asking if she's completely lost her mind, repeating that he told her to calm down first. A bright light flashes and Chin's eyes widen before she collapses to the ground. The protagonist thinks it's best to let her rest for a while. Then he remembers his companion. He had almost forgotten about him. Looking at the liquid beside them, he wonders if he's still alive, but gets no response. He only hopes so. Hao quickly pulls him from the fluid and realizes he's still breathing, though his exposure to that green liquid lasted far too long. He seriously considers ending him right there. If he mutates and joins the out-of-control woman, it'll be the end. But he dismisses the thought. Based on his past life memories, he believes he'll be fine and likely awaken some ability. He decides to let him rest for now, though Shen remains the bigger problem. The best choice would be to tie her down before she wakes again. However, Shen rises, surrounded by a chilling aura. She starts laughing strangely, panting, and Hao wonders if her ice armor lessened the impact of the electric surge he used earlier. Chin grits her teeth and the pressure in the air grows heavier. Hao charges with an explosive kick, but the Ice Queen counters with a wave of frost. He's thrown back, landing hard on his back, muttering that this seems endless. Looking more closely, he sees her body is undergoing mutation, and if she isn't stopped, not even the legendary Ice Queen may return to what she once was. His electric attacks had no effect, and he can't get close enough to land a decisive strike. At that moment, the system notifies him. He can unlock the ability Genetic Lock. Hao startles, asking what the hell that means. Chin keeps firing ice and he groans, telling her to wait since he was trying to read and find a way to help. His companion stirs, dazed, thinking he can't retreat now. Luo blocks her ice attacks until he falls again into the liquid. That's when he activates the new ability. The system informs him his evolution progress is at 10%, and that Genetic Lock is a special reward. More messages appear explaining that the ability can devour the virus and convert it into strength, and asking if he wants to activate it. Hao thinks in confusion about devouring the virus, realizing he can't think clearly, not even knowing where to find a virus at that moment. The water begins bubbling, swirling rapidly into a whirlpool. Shen stares in shock as Hao emerges from the center, his body now tinted red, his appearance altered. His eyes are darker, almost hollow. He looks at his own hands in horror, wondering if he just became a mutant. He reflects that even though he's still conscious, he can't walk around like this. If anyone in the university dorm saw him, they'd call the police instantly. Before he can think further, Chin attacks again with ice. Hao, now strengthened, lifts a massive stone with just one hand, asking himself if he'll ever return to normal after all this. Shen, also visibly changed, screams. Hao smashes the ice apart and says he must first deal with her and think about the rest later. He tests his defense and realizes he can block ice spikes with just his arm. He feels his strength and resilience have greatly increased, and that's good. He looks at the woman and asks if she's still really Shen. The Ice Queen keeps attacking in silence. Dodging, Hao presses again, asking if she still understands human speech. Chin's eyes widen when she sees him block a strike effortlessly with one hand. Hao comments that it might sound strange, but he remembers the Shen he knew wielded twin ice blades. She doesn't stop, and he mutters that she's far too stubborn. He unleashes lightning, shouting once again for her to calm down. The pressure intensifies, chunks of ice shattering and scattering across the floor. Luo insists he's only trying to help her, but she continues her relentless assault. At last he counters fully, slamming her hard into the ground. The protagonist looks at the fallen queen, saying she finally calmed down and thinks that although she returned to her original form, staying too long in the mutant state might leave after effects. Now all that's left is to wait for her fate. In any case, he decides to cover her first. Once again he notices she's without clothes, recalling the first time he found her during the apocalypse, collapsed in an alley. Luo collapses hard to the ground, pain shooting through him, thinking this hurts like hell. He mentally curses that the system never mentioned this kind of side effect and realizes it's bad. He hasn't restrained Pojun or Shen, and now he can't afford to pass out. Shen gets up soon after, looking around and seeing the two of them lying amidst the destruction. She blushes at the sight. Hao stirs awake and notices he's lying in her lap. Jin asks if he's waking up. The protagonist quickly rises, but the Ice Queen holds him, telling him not to move, that he's still injured and should rest more. Embarrassed, Hao lies back down but soon sits up again, asking if she regained her consciousness. Shen replies that she was always aware, but it felt like something was taking over her body. She thanks him for helping her and asks if they've met before, saying he feels very familiar. Hao questions her about this familiarity and asks if she also returned from the apocalypse. Chin misunderstands, asking if he's talking about the clothes, and explains she only found that blanket to wrap herself with. Hao brushes it off, saying it's fine and he must have been dreaming. He reminds himself he needs to pay attention to others who might also have returned, and asks how she ended up with Chang. Shen replies she only remembers being dragged there, and a single word echoed when she lost control: chaos. Luo is intrigued, since in his previous life he had never heard of this group. He wonders why they would use Chang's territory and what their connection is, since they seem like a powerful, hidden organization. At that moment, the Ice Queen hugs him, saying she'll follow him from now on. Hao pulls back, asking her to wait, and questions if she's just trying to hide from that organization. He says she's mistaken, because if they're after her, she'll end up dragging him into it too, and he won't get mixed up with a mysterious group. He thinks he's going soft because of her beauty, remembering Anna, and wonders if something's wrong with him. Shen insists that before, she only thought of revenge. But if he hadn't awakened her, she'd still be a killing machine under their control. Now she can't remember anything. No name, no identity, just this sense of familiarity and safety at his side. She asks where she could go if not with him. Hao thinks it could be amnesia. Considering her power, she would be a great ally. And if that group really operates in Chang's territory, it confirms his ties to the organization. He then declares that if she accepts his orders, she can stay. Qin smiles, hugs him again, and pushes him to the ground, saying she'll be obedient. Pojun arrives shortly after, saying he came to rescue him and calling Shen a smiling witch, swearing she will die. But before he can strike, he's hit with ice. A voice commands him to stop, and the attack halts just short of hitting him. Hao steps in, telling him not to act recklessly, that she isn't an enemy. Pojun asks suspiciously who she is. Soon after, the Ice Queen breaks the bars where the women were imprisoned and tells them not to be afraid, that they're safe now. She says they can choose, leave or stay, but suggests remaining since they have nowhere else to go, just like she didn't. The veteran then calls Hao and asks about what he said earlier, about the end of the world, and if it's true. Hao replies yes, that he's already begun taking things from the void, and asks what more they still doubt. Pojun lowers his head and admits it's true, but says he thought that if there was still time, he'd at least say goodbye. Hao asks if he intends to use the last days to find his wife and child, and thinks to himself that in his past life, he never heard Pojun mention a family. He then hands him something, saying leaving now would be throwing his life away, but he can use that. The veteran asks what it is, and Hao explains that this dungeon is a good hideout against the coming shockwave. He's certain the place where Zhao hid his family is similar, so they should be safe. He suggests using the time to train the freed women and strengthen the dungeon, because Chang won't give up so easily. As for his family, Hao smiles darkly and promises to take him personally to demand answers. Elsewhere, a young man comments with satisfaction that he did a good job this time. The big man confirms everything is fine, saying Master Chang personally ordered that shipment and that he handled everything himself, ensuring each item will be delivered as agreed. Chang smiles and asks if he didn't sneak a peek at the goods. The man startles and hurriedly replies, asking if he's joking, saying he would never dare to do such a thing. The master orders him to take a look at what he brought and asks if that isn't the foundation of the new world he's building. The subordinate looks horrified and asks if those are people and what exactly those things are. Chang twists his neck with a snap and says he asked too many questions, that only the finalized remain, treating him as someone who wouldn't survive long anyway, and orders him to be grateful for such a quick end. He then asks about the other subordinate and why he wasn't guarding the casino, questioning what he was doing there. The man nervously explains that the casino and warehouse were invaded, that they lost everything, including many men, and that a single brat stormed straight into the storage vault. He admits he has no idea how the information was leaked. The master grows irritated, displeased by what he hears, and asks if it was just a brat and if he still has the audacity to show up alive before him. The subordinate tries to justify himself, saying this brat seems to possess an unusual spatial ability and that this time he will take zombie Biao with him, guaranteeing that together they will capture him immediately. The master asks about the spatial ability, then Chang strikes the wall, causing an explosion that opens a massive hole. He declares that Judgment Day is near, and that to remain discreet, they must wait for the moment to pass before carrying out the plan. Alive or dead, the person must be brought back to him. He emphasizes he doesn't need to explain the importance of the warehouse supplies and laboratory items for the new world, warning his subordinate to think carefully about the consequences of failing again. The man nods nervously, saying he understands. Chang reflects on the spatial ability, wondering if another monkey may have escaped from one of the labs, and smiles, finding the thought intriguing. Days later, destruction begins, explosions erupting everywhere. Zhao asks if this is the Judgment Day he mentioned, but Chang replies no, this is only the beginning. Elsewhere, people ask what's happening. A young man approaches survivors, but as he stares at one of them, he realizes it's a zombie, which devours him instantly. Screams echo and the pressure in the air intensifies. Pojun comments on the earthquake, saying it's exactly as the Lord predicted. The apocalypse has arrived. He urges everyone to stay calm and follow the previous drills. Nearby, women who were once wounded are now healed and armed. The Ice Queen watches, wondering if things really will happen as he said, and how he could possibly know so much. The protagonist stands silently, sighs, and orders the system to display his status panel. The interface appears. Luo studies it, realizing that after unlocking the genetic lock, all his attributes have tripled, enough to handle the situation now. The system notifies him. Emergency task activated after the start of the apocalypse. Duration, 24 hours. During this period, all mutants will be at maximum aggression against hosts. Hao confirms his understanding. The monsters advance, and the veteran asks if those are the footsteps they heard and if they've already arrived. The protagonist watches the horde of creatures approach and says that, as planned, it's time to act. Shen agrees, noting the entrance is sealed. Luo comments that's perfect, there's no chance of escape. He releases his chains and thinks that in his past life he died pathetically, but now, given another chance, even without the system, he is ready. He remembers that he purposely blocked the door so that all the monsters would pour in at once. Qin senses the strange aura so intense it frightens even her. The protagonist releases more power, declaring that he will conquer all higher-level mutants until he reaches the world's peak, proclaiming that the hunt has begun. From now on, crystal cores are more valuable than gold and no one will escape. Then Luo notices something odd with his hand, wondering what it is. Only one hand grotesquely transformed, something no one had mentioned before. The monsters hesitate for a moment, ready to strike. Hao excuses himself, saying he needs to ask something first to the broken system. At that instant, one of the monsters raises its arm to attack, but the protagonist shouts for it to wait. Shen calls his name as Luo becomes distracted by his giant hand, where a mouth appears in the center. The hand moves on its own, irritating Hao, who orders it to stop acting independently, demanding answers from the system. The system responds, absorbing large amounts of crystal core energy, enabling new update, temporarily unable to respond. The protagonist yells for it not to update on its own, but more notifications appear. System restarting, shutting down. Luo protests, shouting not to shut down without permission, asking if it couldn't wait until the mutants were finished, complaining that it's infuriating, then orders everyone to move aside. Hao charges, devouring the cores. He feels confused, realizing the more cores he absorbs, the more his consciousness fades, and wonders if all this rage really just came from now. Pojun notices his strange stillness and says something's wrong with him. Shen asks if she should help, but finds herself so focused on him that she forgets about the frozen door. The ice begins to crack, and the monsters surge forward in mass against Luo. Qin steps closer, insisting she wants to help, but Hao orders her to stay back, to keep her distance, because he can barely control himself. Elsewhere, someone watches through a camera, noticing all the creatures in the area are gathering at that very point. Zhao remarks if it isn't near the casino, and Chang frowns, saying it doesn't make sense. Those things don't normally act in groups. Yujin adds that the brat couldn't possibly know about Judgment Day and must have done something to lure the mutants there, but either way he's finished, which is a pity. A system notification appears informing that the update has been completed. The protagonist rises with a roar, wrapped in a terrifying aura, and new messages arrive. Host genome unlock has reached 20% and the new system is activated. Smoke dissipates amid deafening sounds. Luo charges into the monsters, tearing them apart with devastating power while Hao devours them, consumed by a dark intent to annihilate everything. The Ice Queen watches, thinking he looks exactly as she once did, probably unable to control himself now. The protagonist keeps massacring everything around with ease until, for a moment, he stops and looks back in confusion. Shen tries to speak to him, but Hao leaps to attack her, and Qin realizes he has lost control. She raises ice to block and begs him to calm down. The protagonist lets out a massive roar that spreads a terrifying pressure, pinning the Ice Queen in place, unable to move. Luo stares at Shen, but before anything happens, she asks how long he has been recovering there. Hao answers nearly 3 months, and that his wounds should already be healed. Qin presses if he intends to return to the base with her, but the protagonist refuses, saying it would be a burden to carry that weight and he doesn't want to deal with those people every day. The Ice Queen admits she has been healed for some time, but feels afraid, and asks if they will never see each other again if they part. Luo tells her not to worry, assuring her that once he finishes what he must do, he'll visit her at the camp if fate allows. In the present, Shen retreats into a defensive stance. Hao regains his senses, coughing heavily, and Qin asks if he's all right now. The freed women, shocked, observe that he exterminated all the monsters alone, something insane. Pojun comments that this is the true power of an awakened, wondering if he could ever gain something similar. The veteran looks at his own hands and orders the women not to stand around but to clean the area and rebuild the gate in preparation for the next attack. They agree immediately. Elsewhere, Anna questions Zhao, saying he brought her there for an important mission, and asks what place this is. Zhao tells her to stop complaining, affirming they are there only under the Lord's orders. A giant creature ahead comments that hearing that breaks his heart, and upon noticing the redhead, asks if he brought a woman. Yujin cuts the conversation short, stating the Lord ordered them to go to the casino and bring back anyone who could be useful. A helicopter readies for takeoff, and a voice orders them to hurry, board, and wipe out any other factions in the designated territories. Anna thinks she never expected Chang to have such massive forces, but what really worries her is that group called the Executioners, elite forces respected even by the 10. A brute asks if everything is ready, surrounded by several masked men. A subordinate remarks that Zhao was right. The boy was just a brat and likely didn't survive the mutant assault, questioning why they still needed to go. Yujin replies that there is a laboratory beneath the casino where a woman is being kept. The subordinates are shocked to realize it's the Ice Queen. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Shen searches for her partner, saying she can't find him anywhere. Pojin replies that he said he was going to scout the surroundings and would return shortly, leaving while insisting he was fine, probably not to worry anyone. Chin notes there's no way he's truly fine, since his hair changed like that. The veteran comments he seemed calm. The Ice Queen, however, laments that he always insists on carrying everything alone and asks if he can't trust them more or if he still thinks she's weak. Outside, the protagonist walks the streets, exterminating monsters with ease. He then stops and orders the system to open the map. The projection expands before him and Luo analyzes it, confirming that the meteor crater is divided into zones exactly as he remembered. If nothing changes, in the coming years the territories will be conquered, merged, and stabilized until they become fixed power zones. The casino is still far from the nearest crater, but it's a good point to settle and grow gradually. Of course, only if he first eliminates the local ability user factions. As for the mutants, he recalls having faced them in that region already, and that's the real problem now. Hao, examining the system, notices something odd and asks what exactly his ability is and what Tyrant means. The protagonist gets no immediate answer and orders the status panel to open. The system congratulates him and displays the data. Luo sees the skill called Wrath of the Tyrant and reflects if it was what made him lose control, thinking that if he hadn't regained his senses in time, the consequences would have been disastrous. Shen probably doesn't even realize that no one else was controlling her body in that moment, only a blind urge to annihilate all life around. Hao questions whether what made him snap out of it was her completely non-resistant stance, and concludes this damned system seems to have its own agenda. He imagines they'll both use each other until Chang is defeated, and asks the system to show detailed information about Wrath of the Tyrant. The system replies it understands. It explains that while the skill is active, all host attributes increase drastically, crushing any fool who dares face the Tyrant head-on. But it warns that Wrath of the Tyrant requires a high concentration of virus as fuel. Without it, the host's life force will be severely drained and control will likely be lost. It must be used with caution. This makes the protagonist wonder about the high virus concentration, and he decides he really needs to check the crater. Suddenly he notices something. Military vehicles passing through the streets. Below, one of the men asks if that area has already been cleared, and his partner confirms. The protagonist, watching the scene, doesn't understand what those troops are. Elsewhere, a voice calls for the captain, saying all civilians should have been sent to the rally point and asking if they should return. She answers distractedly, confirming if all civilians found in the South District arrived at the power plant and informing the troop they'll head toward the meteor crater, urging maximum caution. Gu wonders if everyone truly evacuated and what that sound was she just heard. She asks the soldier if he heard something like a motorcycle engine. He answers confused, asking what sound she means and who would ride a bike in a situation like this. On the radio, they report the noise is a diesel engine from an armored vehicle. The captain keeps listening but soon identifies something else, a horde of mutants, ordering them to prepare an attack at 3 o'clock. The soldier tries to confirm if it's really an attack, saying he sees nothing, but suddenly monsters appear and they open fire. The protagonist from a distance observes the scene and notes the firepower is heavy, thinking those low-level mutants shouldn't be a problem. He reflects that in his past life, he also survived the early days thanks to military shelter, but soon the army disappeared and abandoned the city, no one knowing exactly where they went. Then Luo notices something and wonders if that's a miner, a type of mutant formed at the crater's impact. He remembers their defining feature as crystal growths across the body, like meteor fragments, and that they usually gather at craters to absorb energy. He questions why one would be here alone, but even so, it mustn't be underestimated. He recalls that in the past, he avoided them as much as possible, but now, it feels like someone just offered him a pillow while he was napping. The captain senses something odd and warns her soldiers to be careful. The gunfire continues. One distracted man's eyes go wide when the monster impales him with its sharpened body. Gu observes up close and notes it is crystallized. The soldiers call for her, but the creature hurls her away. Coughing, she gets up, fires, and orders them not to forget to use what Zhao had given them. The monster is struck by flames and Gu smiles, but then notices tentacles sprouting from its body and wonders if this mutant is of the undead type. Then she hears the motor again. A motorcycle bursts in, ramming the creature and decapitating it in a single strike. The smoke clears and the captain, surprised, asks if he is human. Luo recognizes her and thinks about how she nearly lost to a simple miner. Gu orders the soldiers to lower their weapons, saying he's a person. They grumble, shocked that someone would still ride a bike in this carnage, calling him crazy. Hao, however, observes and concludes she still doesn't know about ability users, finding it curious. In his past life, he remembers she too was a well-known user, part of a military awakened squad, and someone friendly toward ordinary people. If the military hadn't withdrawn from the rally zone, Luo supposes he and Pojun could have lived a decent life under their organization, but decides that's a talk for later. The monster begins regenerating its tentacles, and the protagonist warns that the fight isn't over yet. The creature reforms and rises again, but Luo charges without hesitation. A soldier shouts that the boy is insane, reminding everyone he had just rammed the enemy with an armored vehicle. Another soldier snaps back, asking what nonsense he's talking about. Hao approaches the monster, unleashes an intense energy from his eyes, and begins cutting the creature's body apart, ordering them not to interfere. The protagonist intensifies the assault, discharging lightning until he locates the core. The monster howls and Luo rips it from inside the shell, realizing it's a highly concentrated crystal core, formed by long exposure to the meteor crater zone. Unlike other mutants, the miner's body depends entirely on its core to survive, and only by removing it can it be permanently neutralized. Normally, these mutants possess an extremely tough viral crystal shell, but the captain had already blasted it open earlier, sparing Luo from greater difficulty. An unexpected stroke of luck. He wonders how that miner managed to stray so far from the crater. The dying creature mutters that the power belongs to the Lord's apostle. Hao is stunned to realize it can speak. The monster repeats the word apostle several times, telling them to seek, then begins to disintegrate. The protagonist watches closely as the system emits a notification. Hidden mission activated, details unknown. Luo frowns, annoyed by more problems arising without explanation, demanding to know what the hell it means. New notifications state that discovering innate abilities may unlock the next step. Hao reflects on what innate abilities might be, noting the mission has no time limit or penalty. He decides that as long as this power doesn't drive him insane, he'll return to it later. The system also indicates that the crystals scattered across the ground are meteor crater fragments and recommends they be collected. Luo smirks, thinking there's no need to even say it. Of course, all of it is valuable. The captain, coughing, thanks him for his help and introduces herself as leader of the city's second rescue squad, asking if she may know his name. Luo thinks that soon chaos will engulf the city as factions begin dividing territories, and decides it's better not to get involved. At that moment, a helicopter approaches, drawing everyone's attention. The soldiers ask if it belongs to their unit, but Gu admits she has no idea which faction it belongs to. Hao decides to leave, reasoning that the only ones flying there now are Chang's men and that the supermarket area is in danger. He needs to return quickly. He mounts his motorcycle and warns that the helicopter noise will drive nearby mutants into a frenzy, telling them to prepare. The captain finds him a strange man. A soldier asks if they will just let him leave, but Gu replies she has the feeling they will see him again soon, and reminds everyone they heard what he said. They must prepare for battle. The helicopters begin to land and voices order haste, stressing that the place is an important storage site. Zhao yells for all undamaged supplies to be gathered, and that before entering the dungeon, every living thing must be eliminated and the lights kept on. The subordinates advance, but one halts at the entrance. His partner asks why he stopped, and the man replies if he doesn't feel a strange chill. Suddenly, ice lances fly toward them, forcing them to dodge. One mutters if K-423 is awakened. Yujin shouts for them to fall back and return to the helicopter immediately, calling for Kanta Biao. The brute retorts, asking since when it was his turn to give orders. Zhao snaps at him, warning not to act recklessly because if anything goes wrong with K-423, none of them could handle it. The Iron Fist is summoned and grumbles about why they always bother him with this kind of job. A voice scolds the drunk, ordering him to cover Iron Fist. Laughing, he says it's just an experiment and wonders why they're so nervous. One of them points out that K-423 is nothing like the other test subjects, that no one understands how she awoke, but everyone knows she's the most destructive, violent, and hardest to control. They recall she has already destroyed several laboratories, leaving no survivors, and rumors claim even executor squads were wiped out by her. That's why the superiors ordered the Lord to find a secure place to seal her. The brute further asks about a child with special powers, commenting that with that kind of ability, even a grenade wouldn't be enough to kill it. Zhao remarks that those wanderers must have awakened K-423, and concludes that now they are truly doomed, without salvation. A shame they won't get to test the Lord's methods. A hooded subordinate asks if she has already eliminated other executors, and says it's interesting to see everyone so nervous, since he himself would like to face her in a real fight. He throws a punch and shatters the ice barrier, revealing the Ice Queen standing before them. Shocked, the men ask if she really came out and if she is indeed K-423. Shen stares at them and declares she promised her brother not to cause trouble, warning them not to come closer and assuring them she will not go back on her word. One of them whispers to his partner, asking if that wasn't how she was described and if perhaps they had the wrong person. Yujin watches curiously and asks if she can speak, wondering if a test subject could have regained her own consciousness. He concludes that the brother she mentioned must be that irritating guy. The brute clenches his fists, dismissing the chatter, and says the only thing that matters is crushing her a few times first since she doesn't know her place. Qin assumes a combat stance, but Shen reacts by hurling an ice shard at him. The subordinate bristles in anger. The drunk mocks, saying his comrade wasn't just pretending to be tough, then laughs at his sudden cowardice. He spits flames from his mouth. Shen is surprised, recognizing him as a fire ability user, and raises her shield to block. Another enemy draws his sword and charges at her, saying he'll take her down first for himself. Qin barely dodges, realizing his speed is impressive. The swordsman notices his strike hit ice and wonders if it was just a split-second judgment, praising her as expected of the queen, saying now she will truly face them. His partner points out it's absurd to talk about one-on-one duels since they never had that tradition. The swordsman insists something is off, that she seems to have been suppressing her powers all along. The blows intensify, and the Ice Queen blocks while tormented by the thought that she is weak and unable to resist. Then she unleashes an ice blast while the drunk exhales flames. The battle erupts, Shen fighting alone against them all until one moves in to finish her. Qin intercepts, deflecting the sword, and tells them to back off, saying he'll handle this. She leaps at the enemy and forces him back. The swordsman, falling, admits her strength is truly remarkable, worthy of the legendary K-423. He confesses he always wanted to see what kind of woman made the master so obsessed, and asks how long she can hold out, reminding her this is a dead end. He proposes she stop being their enemy, promising if she returns, the master will treat her well. An inner voice echoes, commanding the Ice Queen to kill them all, reminding her that without it, she cannot help her brother. Shen trembles, recognizing she wants to exterminate them and can barely hold back the other self inside, believing only when she returns to being just a sister can she be stopped. She cries out desperately, asking where her brother is. A bald subordinate asks if everyone else is fine, and his partner confirms. At that moment, the group is taken by surprise as the protagonist bursts in, mowing several down with his motorcycle. The subordinates quickly raise their weapons in order to fire on him. Luo scans the scene, noting the number of enemies, and wonders if it would be too risky to use all his stored energy at once. A grenade is thrown, Hao notices, and an explosion rocks the area. Pojun arrives armed, bringing a group of ability users, declaring he brought reinforcements to attack. He says the lady is theirs, since he opened a door through the back of the casino and the small fries outside will handle the rest. The protagonist calls out to him, ordering not to let any enemy escape. The veteran answers he understands. On the other side, the Ice Queen is still resisting, alone against her enemies. The brute watches her with disdain, commenting that if K-423 is only at this level, they didn't need to bother coming. Zhao, however, frowns, sensing something is off. Though she doesn't show a strong killing intent, she is holding steady against 3 opponents. He reasons that if she truly wanted to escape, no one there could stop her, and suspects she's holding back or waiting for someone. The drunk, drinking more, laughs and says they heard she had a boyfriend, asking if she's waiting for him. He mocks her, saying it's a shame because she'll be disappointed. After all, he's just a reckless kid probably hiding in some corner. He declares she's alone and can taste his supreme flames. He unleashes a torrent of fire and the Ice Queen feels the heat rise, making the supermarket suffocating. She thinks if this continues, she'll run out of options, unable to maintain her ice, and it will become fatal. With no choice, she hesitates until she feels a hand on her shoulder. It's the protagonist. The drunk's eyes widen in shock just before Luo smashes him in the face with a direct blow, coldly declaring he was begging for his own end. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.